guys, it's Jen here from Jen Around the World, and today I'm back with another great recipe for you. And this one is a family favorite of ours. It's been in my family for generations, and it is my mom's Southern style cornbread dressing. Now, all right, well, the first thing we need to do is we have got to chop up an onion because we're going to soften it in 1 stick of butter on the stove and get it all nice and sweat it out. And the reason we do this is because you don't want a crunchy bite of onion in your dressing. So let's get this done. All right, so I'm gonna show you how easy it is to dice an onion. I learned this on Food Network from Rachel Ray. All the time I've been told that you have to make slices in your onion and then go long ways and then chop to dice. She says you don't have to do that. An onion already has that shape, so all you really have to do to dice an onion is just put streaks in it, or you're cutting it lengthwise instead of long ways. And you don't want spirals, and don't go all the way to the hairy end because then you're gonna slice that in two. Go right up to it, okay? Then you're gonna turn your onion back to the side like this, and you're just gonna go right down the front of it and as if you were cutting it into strings or slices. And then when you get to this part, just throw that out. You're not gonna need that. Okay, so we're gonna take our half of an onion. If you want more onion, you can put the whole onion in there. My family's not a big fan of onions, so I tend to leave, you know, onion out a lot of times unless I can sneak it in there. Since my son doesn't eat dressing, I can pretty much put anything that I want to in there, but for this one, we have family coming, so I don't know if they like onions, so I'm just going to put just a little bit in there so that it's not so noticeable, but I like the onion flavor. So you're gonna take your diced onion and you're gonna put it in your 1 stick of butter on medium-high heat and soften it for about 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, guys. Once you get your onion softened, it's time to get all of the ingredients together for your dressing. So you're gonna start with a large bowl. You're gonna need a very large bowl. And this is my old Tupperware bowl, and I've had it for years. And that's what I use mainly to make my dressing in because I have so much room. So what you're gonna need is you are gonna need 1 pan of cornbread. Now I have a recipe on my website for Southern skillet cornbread, and that's perfect. It's like a 10-inch skillet, and that's the perfect amount of cornbread for this recipe. So you're gonna take and you're gonna crumble it all up. And I cooked this yesterday because you don't want like fresh cornbread. You're just gonna want, you know, day-old cornbread. So then you're just gonna take and just crumble it up, all the pieces, and put it right into your bowl. Okay, for the next step, you're gonna take 4 slices of bread and tear them up and put that in there as well. Now, you can use any bread that you have on hand. We have honey wheat, so that's what I'm using. And just tear it just like this, just as if you were going outside to feed a bird, you know, just little tears. It just adds more moistness to your dressing because you don't want dry dressing. I don't know about you, but there is nothing in the world worse than going to bite into dressing and it being dry as dust. I'm not kidding. Nobody wants that. We ain't got time for no dry dressing. And yes, I'm Southern, so I can say that. All right, so now once you get all of your bread tore up, you're gonna start adding in all of your spices and ingredients. And of course, if you're making Southern cornbread dressing, a lot of people don't like to use sage, but I like the taste of sage in my dressing. So we use sage, poultry seasoning, salt, pepper, chicken broth, and eggs. So if you're allergic to eggs, you can leave the eggs out. There are recipes on the web that use Southern cornbread dressing without eggs, but we like eggs in ours. It's a good binder and it holds it together. All right, so let's put in the other ingredients. Okay, so for starters, we're gonna add in ground sage. And I get my spices at Aldi. They're really cheap, they're inexpensive. I think they're like 99 cents. That's where I shop the most. And so we are going to be adding in 2 teaspoons of ground sage. I'm reading my own recipe just so I make sure I get it right. If you wonder what I'm looking at, that's what I'm looking at. So we're gonna do 2 teaspoons of sage. And you can eyeball it just because this is not baking, this is just cooking. If we were baking, you would want to make sure that it was precise, but since we are cooking, you can eyeball it and add a little more or take a little away if that's what you want. Okay, and then we are also going to add in 1 teaspoon of poultry seasoning. And again, like I said, I get all my spices at Aldi. I've ordered some online from Amazon, which is good to have whenever you can't find what you're looking for and you need something. I love that Amazon has their Prime Pantry and you can shop on there and find all that you need there. All right, and then we're gonna add a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper and a teaspoon of salt. And I usually just eyeball those because I have a little salt and pepper thing that my daughter got me a few years ago. And yes, I have clean hands, so don't worry about that. All right, and then after you do that, we're gonna add in 2 large eggs and we're gonna beat them up before we add them in. To do that, I usually just use a measuring cup. It makes it easier. And you just put your eggs right on in there and scramble them up. Now I have eggs on my hand. Let me wash my hands. We're just gonna give them a quick beat. And we're gonna pour those in. And then last but not least, we're gonna pour in 4 cups of chicken broth. And the chicken broth that I use, like I said, I get from Aldi. They have an organic version and it's really cheap. It's like $1.99 versus a lot of the other more expensive. And they even have bone broth. If you wanna use bone broth, I think it's $2.29 or $2.99, but I've used both. They're excellent and they're so good. But anyway, 4 cups of chicken broth. Now the reason that you use so much chicken broth when you are making dressing is you want your dressing to be extremely moist. Here's the reason. If you don't have soupy dressing when you're making it, when you go to cook it, it will be dry as dust, y'all. You don't want that. I'm telling you. So when you mix up your dressing, if it looks like 4 cups of broth is not enough and your dressing is not soupy, you need to add more liquid. Now you can cook it longer and this will absorb some of the liquid if it's too wet still when you get done cooking it at the end of the time. And don't forget to add in your butter and your onions. I almost forgot that step. Is still a little dry. I'm going to add a little more liquid to mine. And here's the thing, I'm using chicken broth, but if you are vegetarian, you can use vegetable broth. It would work just as good. So you don't have to use straight up chicken broth. Or Aldi's now has turkey broth. That would even be really good in this. Some people, like my mama, she used to take this and she would put in chopped turkey in her dressing. And it was really good, but since I haven't cooked a turkey yet this year, I'm not putting that in there. But normally, if I'm fixing this on Thanksgiving, I do take some of the bird and chop it up and put it in the dressing. There is my delicious homemade Southern corn style bread dressing. And as you can see, it's right here. It's still hot, just came out of the oven. I cut it too soon, so my piece fell apart. So make sure that you let it rest before you cut it. And have a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you enjoy this recipe. Bye.